Just a
Seems like
you're
it.
just a gadfly, okay,
Getting this.
great. All righty. Hello. Well, welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, November 13th, 2018. At this point, we don't have a quorum, but we're expecting a fourth member to show momentarily. We have, our proposed agenda is a financial update, the 2019, FY 2019 status and our 2020 planning for budgeting. Then a financial policies update. There's been a working group that reviewed our financial policies and are recommending a couple of changes that Bonnie will go through with the group. And we'll hold that off until we do have a quorum because we do want to vote on that. Then member updates, public input, if we have any public. Minutes, we won't have any minutes because Maryland's in Spain. Then we'll adjourn the meeting. So I guess we'll go ahead and start with a financial update. Bonnie, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
I thought it would be helpful, since we have the tax classification hearing coming up on Monday, with the Board of Assessors and the Board of Selectmen, to go through the information that we presented them last week. So this is just basically an informational session, and it primarily looks at fiscal 2018 data and some of the 19 data that we've got gathered to date. So I put the slides in for you to kind of follow along if you want to. I also put in some community comparison data that I'll go through, which it's interesting just to kind of look at, you know, how we sit among the 17 or 18 communities.
Just text Tom and see how far out he is. I mean, if he's, you know, an hour out, then we'll.
When he sent me a note, he said he was going to be 30 minutes late. So
Okay, you just check and see. Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. Okay, so the first one is just where we're looking at where Littleton's tax comparison sits compared to the other communities that surround us. We have 17 communities, Littleton being the 18th that we use. And you can see we're really right in the median. Littleton follows pretty closely the median of the 18 communities. Let's see. So the second thing in looking at the tax comparison is the single-family valuation. So this is where we kind of deviate from the median. You can see our valuation is a little lower than the average, and again, it's 17 communities surrounding us. So we're looking at Acton, Westford, Groton,
Harvard.
you know, Air. So
Harvard.
yes, Harvard. So there's a lot of more affluent, I guess, communities to the east of us that are taking up that median value. And one of the things that I would say is when you're looking at taxes and valuation and comparing yourself to other communities, a lot of people grab onto that rate. What's the rate per thousand? You really don't want to get onto that because when you're in a community like Concord, where the values are very high, the rate's going to be low. And because the levy is what it is, it's just a mathematical calculation. What you want to look at is the average tax bill, what people are actually paying out of pocket, because that's a better comparison community to community. And we have some comparisons on that. So our single-family valuation, the average was $418,652 for 18. The median was $427, so we're not that far off. You can see the last few years, our valuations have been going up. We've recently made some changes in the assessor's office with staffing and kind of a division of duties, so we're going out to do more interim adjustments as we need with market sales data, so we're keeping those valuations more current. We're required to do a full revaluation every 5 years now, so the next one will be 2021. The last one was in 2016, and you can see in 2016.
But this must also be impacted by the fact all these new houses are all $700,000 or $800,000 houses,
Exactly.
right?
That's
Exactly.
what I was thinking,
Yep.
absolutely. There's got to be some
There is,
impact
yes,
there.
and we'll see it in a couple of other slides too, but that's definitely got an
Okay.
impact. So the average single-family tax bill versus the median. So this is where I find that the comparison is a better comparison. Again, you're not looking at rate, you're looking at what people are actually paying. So we're actually a little bit below the median. We were 10th at $7,594 for the average tax bill. The median was $7,798. So it's just about 2.62% under. So it's kind of, good to see where we sit in the mix. The excluded debt versus the median. So we were pretty high for the excluded debt in 2012. That's when we took on, the police station debt, the Russell Street School renovations, all of this, new debt that we took on. But in the last few years, we've been paying down that excluded debt by using the Debt Exclusion Stabilization Fund. And you can see that is having an impact, particularly in 2017 and 18. So our debt is rolling off faster, and we've been able to get under the median for our comparison communities.
So at this point, we are less than $1.5 million of excluded debt.
Yeah, this year it's like $1.3 million.
Okay.
Yep. But last year it was $1.409 million.
Okay.
So that's great progress. The amount of excluded debt that we had was a lot to absorb those few years, so.
Right.
So this is the levy breakdown for fiscal 19. Prior year levy limit, which is our regular levy limit, it doesn't include excluded debt, was $35,350,431. 2.5% is the allowed increase, so that's $883,761. And our new growth this year was a whopping 1.8 million, just over 1.8 million.
Excuse me, the 35,350
Yep.
includes all of the point?
All of the point, the new growth includes the projects from the point that came on this year, the $1.8 million.
Okay.
So, yes, the 38 includes everything that's up.
So okay,
Yes.
up to date?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then we have the levy limit tops out at just over 38 million. The debt exclusions total 1.3 million this year, just over 1.3, so the total levy will be $39,405,606. This would have been higher because if we hadn't used that debt exclusion stabilization fund, we'd be topping out that, the debt exclusions at just about $1.5 million, because we're using that to pay it down. So it is a direct savings to the resident. On the single rate, by using that applied debt service, we're saving 18 cents on the single rate, so it's real money to the taxpayer, so it's definitely a benefit. I would make the comment that new growth has been great the last few years. We're pretty much, the point doesn't have anything coming on for this January, so next year's new growth is determined by what's in place as of January 1st. So we had everything in place last January. We haven't had any new buildings come on. There's a little bit that we might be able to capture from the rock climbing, yeah. But, that will be like a supplemental. It's not going to be in place, there's not going to be any major additions in place by January 1st. Housing is still strong, so I expect the housing would continue, strong again next year. But we really need the commercial, industrial, and personal property growth to kind of balance that out. And we'll go through why that's important.
And about how much of the 1.8 is the point? Of the 1.8?
I think I have it in here. I think, yeah.
Ballpark, is it?
Yeah, I think it's a few slides down.
Okay, I'll wait,
Yeah, we'll get
that's
there then.
fine, as long as we get to it,
Yep.
because that's the nut that we're not going to have next year. Okay.
Yep. So again, this is the levy breakdown, and it shows you the excluded debt. So we're keeping the excluded debt with the way that we're financing the debt exclusion stabilization fund. This 1.335959 is a sustainable number. It's actually the it's the amount of excluded debt that we would pay in fiscal 2025, but we funded enough in the debt exclusion stabilization fund to drop it down to that now and sustain it through there, so that we're not getting any spikes in the rates. That's why we've been making deposits into that account, so that we can facilitate this. So what we might want to look through this budget cycle and see what it would take to get us out to fiscal 26. There's a big drop there, so it would be a big deposit into the debt exclusion stabilization fund to facilitate that, because you'd have to sustain it through the, fiscal 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25.
And this doesn't assume any new projects?
No, this does not. This is actual, what we have on the books.
Okay.
Property values, so again, I stated it's a non-revaluation year. The increase in overall total property value was 6.56%. That's broken out in a couple of different areas. The existing property value increase went up 1.69%, just due to residential value adjustments. So different neighborhoods based on sales, we could see, oh, that, that value is going up, we need to adjust the existing value. It's not new growth, it's just a change in valuation.
A shift, basically, right?
We did have new growth value increase of 4.87% on the levy. That's a big amount. Again, when you're comparing 1.8 million in new growth compared to the regular levy increase of 900,000, that's a big increase. So it's a lot of activity. And again, the next revaluation will be in fiscal 2021.
Well, one thing we heard in the last Massachusetts Finance Committee group meeting that we went to was, in the good times, you should be salting away, if you can, some of that new growth, because you know it's going to tail off. If you spend up to the new growth and it tails off, then you really potentially get yourself in trouble. So we may want to actually, when we have a full group, actually have a discussion about that, whether we want to try to claw some of that back into reserves or let it, flow through. And that's for that very reason, because we know next year that there's nothing coming up for the point, which we've lived off for the last 4 or 5 years now.
Residential will still be strong for sure, but he
Yeah.
said that's.
So, just something to think about. Okay.
So this is just the breakout of the levy, the total of, the pie, what percent is residential, what's commercial and industrial, and what's personal property. So almost 78%, 77.92% is residential value. Commercial and industrial makes up 18.89, and that leaves personal property at 3.19. You can see the swing and the increase in the increase in value is on residential, the last 3 years in particular. There is an increase on the commercial, but it just is much more noticeable on those blue bars. Our total property valuation is almost $2 billion. That's kind of a milestone. So we're just under it right now.
No parade.
Billion here, billion there, pretty soon we're talking real money.
I heard that somewhere before.
Well,
So again, this is the,
It's a little bit surprising to me that it looks like the residential growth, say from FY 17 to 18, is actually more than the commercial growth. Is that,
Yeah.
the scale,
Yeah.
17 to 18 looks almost flat.
it's been crazy. I
Yeah,
can
the-
see
the
that. Yeah,
residential is-
amazing.
it's crazy, yes.
And we,
Because they're all $700,000 houses when they
Yeah,
come on.
absolutely,
Yep.
Yeah.
starting.
but yeah, that's a good point, because we're sitting here talking about the point and how much it brought in, and then
Yep.
we look at.
Well, and this is a good
matched
slide.
Residential growth.
This is a good slide for this, because the next one, the residential as a percentage of total. Now, these are small increments in between them, but they're important increments. So back in fiscal 2012, the residential percentage was 78.42% of the total value. Right now, we're at 77.92. But you can see in fiscal 15, it was up to almost 80%. 79.68, and then the point really started to come online, and Potpourri and some of those larger
That's what brought it
facilities,
down.
and helped us
Okay, so you
bring
can
this
realize it
down.
in this more so than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's interesting to see.
So this is just values, though, this isn't
Yep, this is just
taxes and other
values.
things, this
Yep.
is just values.
Yeah.
So total valuation changes. So this, fiscal 12, 13, 14, and 15, again, this is prior to making some changes in the assessing functions. We weren't doing as many interim adjustments, and we weren't required to. And we're not required to now, but we've really kind of seen how important that is in keeping the valuations up to date. So you can see in 16, we had a reval, and the existing valuation increased on residential class because, we had a full reval. Since then, we've been keeping up with it, so that you can see the changes are increasing, a little bit every year. I'm sure that in fiscal 2021, we'll have an increase, but it won't be as large as the increase was from 15 to 16.
So
Again, just valuation, not,
why, just curious, why the decrease 12
Yeah.
to 15? Is that just depreciation?
That was gonna be my question.
What is the,
it would mean, like, if you get your property valuation in fiscal 12 and 13, there were not as many sales, and the actual average home price in Littleton went down in those years, based on the assessments. But they weren't actively going out and doing a lot of the
Counterintuitive.
interim adjustments that they can do.
Because that was, between 2008 and now, things have been going up consistently, so it doesn't feel right, but
yeah. So
but it's
this is
based
every
on the real
5 years.
numbers anyway. This isn't
Yeah.
conjecture, this is based on some numbers that you use.
Yeah, these are based on the valuations that were in the system. So there were some neighborhoods that, based on the sales, they just didn't increase as much. They didn't chase them.
It does say,
as hard.
this says they went down.
For existing valuations, yeah, a little bit they did,
Okay.
yeah. But
Okay.
again, we've changed kind of the
We've
way that
changed how
we
you
do
do it,
things.
so now it's- now
We
they're not,
got
right.
new staffing, and we've kind of, we're out in the
Okay.
field a little bit more.
Yep.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't even need to, don't look to be 15 because we weren't, I'm not saying doing it properly, we just weren't doing it.
We're doing it
Different.
like everybody else. We're doing it a little different now than,
Yeah.
this actually makes the fiscal, like the full reval less of an impact to people when
Yeah.
it happens. Because when we did the reval in 16, there was a line out the door, like, what, where did this come from? And again, it's not making more money for the town, it's just changing the valuation, but, it
Yeah.
could have an impact to people's taxes. But it's not a revenue generator, it's just shifting
Shifting it around.
values. So it makes it a little bit easier to absorb if you're doing these regular adjustments. Okay. And again, you want to look at the single value home. It did, it was in 7, and then it
That's right,
dropped
going
in
down.
8 and 9. And then it
Surprised.
started to pick back up in 15, 16, up to where we are now. So we're kind of just recovered back to fiscal '07 numbers. We're just surpassing that now.
It would be interesting, if I don't know how easy it would be to get, was what is the impact of the new larger price houses on the going from 418 or 400
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
up to 435?
I'm sure
It's
it's-
got to be a pretty major impact,
I mean,
but it's
twice
just-
the value of the
because-
median of the,
Right, but
based on sales
so
data.
people look at this and they say, oh, well, my house is worth a lot more. Well, maybe it's not worth a whole heck of a lot more, but it's the big houses that are swaying the
Yep,
numbers.
you're playing the averages here, definitely. So again, this just shows the decrease, from 7 to 13, about, $49,000 or 12%.
What are we looking at
We were
here?
low in 13, which was
Value, single
366.
family. What's the difference between these two that I'm looking at here?
It's the same.
Yeah, it might have just the way it was printed.
No, but there's different things on here, so what are we looking at?
Oh, talking about the front end.
Yeah, it was just
It's just pointing
showing
to
the,
different- I
the
see,
7
I
to
got it.
13
Okay,
drop,
I got it.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the
yeah, okay.
13 to 19
I see, okay.
recovery.
I see.
I would
We're doing
assume
this
this is
PowerPoint would be
somewhat
different.
of a regional trend too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Middlesex County type trend, I bet you'll see the housing bubble that burst, right?
Oh, yeah,
I think
definitely.
everyone's recovered, or is recovering, in at least Middlesex. for
Yes.
sure.
Average commercial property. So this is not the mathematical average. Because we have such a diverse stock of commercial buildings, like if you did the mathematical average, your digital's gonna skew
everything
things.
everything else.
So for presentation preferences, the Board of Selectmen wanted to see like a mom and pop shop in the village, what that would be. So this is what this represents. We picked up a particular parcel in the common area, an office building, and have used that as our
Base.
base. So it's not the mathematical average, it's just an average based on a shop in the village. So things were pretty flat in 8, 9, and 10, and at that point, they were still using, I think, just a static number. They weren't even using a particular shop, they just used a static number. And then we assigned it to a building and said, at least, let us track it, for a particular site, so we can look at that. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, it's much better data to follow. So the commercial values have gone up, even in existing buildings.
So you must have picked a property that doesn't have a lot of vacant space in it,
No, right,
like some of them do up there.
right.
Okay.
So this doesn't look at IBM, and it doesn't look at the small. tiny-
No, it's just looking at a Littleton common business. So, then we get into the pie charts. So we have property values by class. So we have two main classes, residential, which is in the blue, and the commercial, industrial, and personal property, which is in the orange. So the blue is 77.92%, as we mentioned before, and the commercial, industrial, and personal property is 22%. So there's only, we have a split rate, so there's only a certain percentage of the blue pie that we can shift to the orange, okay? And we do that. A lot of communities don't, but we've had a split rate for years now, probably 20, 30 years now. So 8.7 million is in the commercial, and 30 million in value is in the,
On a flat rate.
I'm sorry, levy, on the levy. So 30 million of the levy is made up of the residential housing, and then 8.7 million is made up from commercial values. If we had a single rate, your rate would be $20.46 for this fiscal
Across
year.
the board, right?
Correct. We don't have a single rate. The rate right now is $18 or whatever, so it would be a big increase if we went to a single rate on the residential class, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody running for office this year. So again, the portion of the single rate is shifted to the commercial class. The amount of that shift is voted every year by the Board of Selectmen, and in most years, the shift can't add more than 50% of the existing single rate commercial, industrial, and personal property levy. So you can't just unilaterally say, we're gonna put $6 million more over there. If it's 8.7 million, you can't increase it by more than 50% of that 8.7 million.
You can't shift it, but if it naturally occurs, it's fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's totally different, yeah.
This is just
Yep.
when the, okay, so when they're setting.
We're
the
voting the
tax.
shift, yep.
All right, I should know this, but so these numbers, this is just the love, so this is just how much you're charging, this is where we're getting the,
Right, that's where we're getting
Okay.
the money from.
Okay.
So now this is.
so you have that number first, and then you determine which is gonna come from.
Exactly.
And then you get the
So
rate from that.
we've got all of our values certified by DOR now, so we know what our values are, and we have them. So now we know how much we can shift. Mm-hmm. It's up to the board to decide
What percent?
what
to shift?
percentage they want to shift.
And then
So we
what-
know the maximum, we know, where we are last year and everything else, but this is an example of, of like a shift here. So you're gonna say the commercial levy is 8.7 million. You could take 3.3 million of the residential levy here, this blue, and push it over to the orange piece, and they would pay proportionally more than the residential class would pay.
It's not the best way to grow your commercial base, though, if you're looking for more.
Right. It's a balancing act. I mean, there are,
To have more profitable businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's-
yeah. And there are other things that attract commercial industries to Littleton, our electric rates. Like IBM, our electric rates were a big factor, when IBM came, because of the way their facility runs. There's other things, but it is a balancing act. You don't want to push too hard. So that's an example of the shift that we used last year. That's what, if we did the same thing that we did last year, this is what it would look like. We would be taking 3.3 million from this residential class and pushing it over to commercial.
Really?
Well,
That's a lot.
but last year, But that's what last year looked like.
Right.
It's not like we're taking another 3
No,
million.
Oh,
we worked our way up to that.
okay, I'm gonna say, whoa.
You know, so that it's, yeah, you know, that's what we've crept up to, the 11 and almost 12 million
Right.
on the CIP.
Well,
So then, after that happened, it made, instead of that 78-22,
Right,
it put it to 30-70,
right.
essentially.
all right, so I'm sorry, but I guess what I'm missing here is I'm looking at this property values by class,
Yeah,
and you got these percentages, right? And it's the same as what we're doing over here on the levy.
it's
The
similar.
percentage, no, the percentages are exact. 22.08% for the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right, and I'll flip over,
22.08,
plus that comes in here for around 30.
yeah.
And
So
then go
you
to the
went
next one.
from 78-22 to 70-30, basically, or 69-31.
Okay, so this is how, what I'm trying to figure out is how you determine to move these around. So what you're doing is actually starting with this and then figuring out what you're going to move around it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's
and
what I
there's a
was,
limit on what you can move.
Okay.
That's the vote they have to
Yeah.
take every year.
They can't just move anything they want.
well, that's what I
Yeah.
was trying to, there's got to be more, it's not just, yeah, there's got to be some rationale
Yeah,
behind this,
you
right?
can't add more than 50%.
But you're right.
So if the commercial levy, that orange piece was $8 million, you couldn't add more than 4 million to it. You can't add more than 50% to it, otherwise you're just like killing the commercial class with it. So there are limits behind it in this, but the selectmen figure out where,
Those limits are state law, or those
it's,
are, that's not,
based in the state statutes.
but that's any given year you can do that, or as at any time.
Any given year. You set the tax rate once a year.
Right.
So each
So I
time you
can
set
have to
it.
go up 50% this year, and next year I can do another 50%?
No.
That's what I'm asking. No.
First, we figure out actual values. Each
Okay,
year,
yes,
we
now we're back to
get
the
our
actuals
actual
again.
values.
Okay.
And then we figure out, you know.
Okay, and then
what
you've
we're
got a
gonna
fudge
shift.
factor, and that's what you're working with, is just the fudge factor.
Right.
Okay, now I get it, thank you.
Gotcha.
And
It's
the-
not an easy concept to get. I mean, this is like the most complicated function of municipal
And the
finance.
delta
Okay.
would be about another $1 million that legally
They
the
could.
selectmen could shift.
Yep.
Okay.
Should they
Yep,
really.
so they didn't shift the max.
Okay,
Right,
now I get it,
right.
though. This is the given, and then we have 50% of that as a,
Yep.
Fudge
So
factor, whatever
every
we're
year,
doing.
it's like you reset to zero. We figure out values, and then we figure out the shift. But we always have to go, like, what did we shift last year? Because
Sure.
if, I mean, you can't just
Jump.
go straight to
Yeah,
a
yeah,
single
yeah.
rate,
Okay, no, no,
because
right.
the residential class is gonna go, oh my God, the commercial people are gonna go, yay, you know, it's a balancing act. All right, so again, we're on this slide that just kind of shows the 70-30 shift now, based on what we did last year.
Okay, so that's the decision that the selectmen will make in the next meeting or
Right.
next month or whenever they.
Next meeting.
To talk about it.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, they're scheduled for the hearing on Monday. I think it's at 7:15.
Okay.
and so what is the feeling? And we kind of keep it where it is, or we still want to move more to commercial, or we want to move less from commercial, or where?
Well, when you know you have a lot of commercial growth coming online, you can tend to shift value a little bit more to commercial, because you know there's going to be some more next year. You're not putting yourself into trouble. But say you have a whole bunch of housing come on and no commercial growth. So now you get all this, the residential class just crept up a little more. Your commercial class got squeezed because, say, residential went, and I'm throwing odd numbers out, but
Right.
say it went to 85% and 15%. Well, we were at almost 22 now, and now it's lower. So if I shifted, say it went down to 7 million or 6 million, and I shifted 3.3 million of the residential class to the commercial, I'm over my limit. If the commercial class is down to 6 million, then I can only add another 3, but I added more than that last year, so now I got to push back to the residential class. So now the residential class goes up to 2.5, plus the growth, plus whatever has to come off commercial. So it's, you want to make sure that you're making these decisions knowing that, you know, what's coming down the pipeline. So the last few years, we've kind of, you know, hovered a little bit more towards the shifting to commercial, because we knew we had things coming on from the Point, we had Potpourri coming online, you know, we had a lot of things going on. We don't have much going on next year. You know, we have the tire building that might be going up.
Couple more holes in the point.
Yeah, but like, building is there. You know, there might be a couple more, but they're not in place for January 1st. So, you know, it might be a cautionary year that we kind of don't push too hard on the commercial class. Because we know that residential is strong. We know that we're going to get growth from houses. And that's just going to increase that proportion of the pie.
And that's growth, that's not shifting stuff around, that's growth, so that's different, right?
It's both. You know, it's essentially both.
This is a really different looking pie from town to town.
Yes.
I'm thinking of different, some of the communities inside the belt that are probably 50/50.
We were driving 128 the other day and looking at all those buildings going up in Waltham, and you just can't even imagine what their
I
budgets
know.
are like.
But I mean, it's gotta be almost 50/50, you would think, for some of the massive commercial areas.
I think when we started shifting commercial, I looked it up years ago, but it was like 70-30. It was really a 70-30 mix of commercial, and now we're like almost 80-20. I mean, when you're looking at round numbers.
Yeah.
So it made more sense then. You know, I think ultimately you'd like to have like a 60-40, and then that's a good community to start shifting, you know, things around with. We're creeping up towards the end of it.
And realistically, we won't see any new growth in the common area until, if you believe the sewer is gonna spark all
years,
this wonderful
5.
growth, you're
years,
probably
yeah,
3
yeah.
to 5 years out before you see anything meaningful. I mean, I would think.
You'd probably see growth near the train station before you.
It may be,
Right,
you know, it may
right.
very well be. No, I really think somebody should be doing some modeling on what that could look like. Because, you know, the point's basically done. There may be one more phase up on top of the hill, but not anything like what he's already done. There's
So-
nothing along 119. Maybe down by the train station.
Yeah.
Other than that, I haven't heard of anything else that could be of any significance other than the housing.
Yeah. So I sat through the Board of Selectmen when you did this. It's fascinating, actually. You do definitely learn something every time you see this. That it's not when someone just says, oh, my taxes are going up. Well, let's have a talk. And we can kind of show there's a lot behind this. And I guess the question is, one thing you might have answered. So when you're sitting here with an empty building, let's use Foster Street, some of the big, huge buildings at the end of Foster. When those buildings fill up, is that represented here, or is
Yeah.
this piece of pie?
So I'll use the Apple Dairy Fine facility.
Yeah.
So, and I'm probably going to have the wrong numbers, but say we had it as a vacant facility valued at 8 million, okay? Because it was vacant.
Yeah.
And they use an income approach when you're going to the appellate tax board. They don't care about your facility, they want income approach for businesses. So a vacant building isn't bringing you any money in.
Zero.
So it's, it was $8 million. The minute that became occupied, it went up to 12 million.
Okay.
Wasn't growth, but it was a shift in value. So that provides relief to the residential class.
So it shows
because-
on this pie.
Yes.
All right, I guess that's what I was trying to get at. So part of our commercial growth, when you're sitting here looking at empty buildings, that can be a major part of our marketing strategy for Littleton, right?
Yep.
Not, knowing that we're not building a lot of commercial. is to fill
Reusing,
these
getting those
massive-
facilities online and in use provides direct relief to the residential class.
Yeah.
Just straight line.
Right.
No growth, it's not an additional tax, it's growth if they put more into it. But if they just become occupied, like I said, the Very Fine one was a great one to look at as a case study, because it was like overnight.
Yeah. Did we have a split rate, just curious, in the 80s? Have we always had?
Yeah, I think since the late 80s.
I was just thinking when all those went in, digitals and all that, this pie looked a lot, we didn't have a big population. I bet we were probably looking more 50/50,
Oh, it's closer, yeah.
you know? So I
I
just,
know what Harvard looks like, I was just looking at it like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, interesting.
This just shows the shifts that have been voted the last, few years. Again, it was up high, at its high point in 14. We shifted pretty close to the maximum then, and we've been able to back down. So we really pushed hard against the commercial class in that year, but then we knew that there were things coming online. And that's kind of the rationale, I think, behind that decision then. So they've kind of let it come back down to the norm since then. But it's just interesting to see the changes, and we like to track the data, so. CIP factors, again, when you chart it, we're just charting the data, whatever the factor is. It's kind of like, okay, that looks interesting, we'll put it out there. But the high was, 1.5 in 2007, so that was the maximum shift. We hit that, and we were really close to it again, I think in 2008, and then in 14. But we've been lower than that maximum shift since.
But have you and the selectmen had a discussion over, is there a band that we would like to stay within? Or is it, this is just catch as catch can every year?
When we have the discussion with them next week, what I try not to do is, give them my direct opinion. I try and just provide them with the information that I know is in the pipeline, like the fact that we don't have any large commercial structures in the pipeline. So I'm thinking that we'll be strong in growth next year. Primarily will be residential growth, and that's going to affect the percentages of that pie. So when we get to the discussion again about that piece of the pie that they can shift, I'm going to caution that it might be smaller next year. So you don't want to go to the max if you think you might not have it next year. Because then it falls completely, the levy is the levy. If I can't get it out of the commercial class, it goes to the residential. So if you push too hard towards 150 when you know you're not going to have strong commercial growth coming up the next year, you leave yourself in danger of going over that 150 in the next
Having a
year
big
and
shift
having to.
in 1 year, right?
Right,
Which you have no control over at that point.
right.
I think it's, when we look at it, it's a little different perhaps than a selectman looking at it, because there are political, you just mentioned.
Absolutely.
Ramifications to shifting this either way. So I'm sitting here trying to wrap around financially what makes the most sense for the town. So we have the luxury of just erasing that. Piece right out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
What makes the most sense, and I that's why, being frank with us, I appreciate it, because
It's a tough,
it's,
See, that's why I think doing the modeling
yeah.
would be valuable,
Yeah, I
because,
agree.
if we were able to fill out Foster or some of the other buildings up at that end of the town, what would that do? When we rejuvenate the common, what do we expect from that? And do we expect to get what people think we're going to get? I mean, realistically, how much is that actually going to be worth to the taxpayer? If it's
Yeah,
$3
good.
million worth of new growth, or $5 million worth of new growth, or some number over some period of time.
So to
What is it?
generate $1 million in revenue and growth, it's about $33 million
In
of value.
value.
That's the point.
Yeah, so
So you need to look at the point on the
So
comment.
you're looking at, I think, there's no magic bullet, because no matter what you do, and we can sit here and look at the common, putting these little things, it's not necessarily, it's not a magic bullet. The point is kind of a magic bullet.
Well-
You can feel it and you can see $1 million.
Right.
But there's a lot that went into that to get that $1 million.
Right.
You're not going to see that anywhere else. We don't have a place to do that again.
Right. No, I think that, the way to think of it is, if you were standing on the 495 bridge and you looked at the point, it's basically worth $1 million a year, plus $1.2 million, Bonnie,
Right.
with the taxes and all,
Yeah,
$1.4 million.
it's probably closer to $1.4 million with the,
Okay, so
with
that's
the room
worth
and the
$1.4
meeting.
million.
Yeah.
So, in Chase's presentation on, with the last information session,
Yeah.
he was saying, maybe it's a half to $750,000 of, you know, benefit. So if you say it's a half, then it's 1/3 of the point.
Yeah.
If you turn up and look up Route 2 edge. If it's
Probably more realistic.
if it's 750, it's half of the point, the value of the point. I mean, it's, that area's gonna look incredibly different. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know, but just the, you know, sort of banding it like that and saying, okay, well, do we think it's gonna be 3/4 or is it only a half?
Yeah.
If it's only a half and it comes in 3 years or 5 years out, what does that do to us? What does it do for us
Yeah.
as a town in terms of tax revenue? Probably not all that much for the next 3+
Over
years.
100,000 a year for
Maybe if we're
several
lucky,
years.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of basically cover our cost,
Yeah.
you know?
you
If you look
hope.
at it that way, right? Kind of.
Yeah, so if people are thinking of that, quote, new growth as financially saving the town,
Well, I think-
maybe it is, maybe
Well,
it
it's
isn't.
proven, I mean, to some degree, that commercial definitely, when we say saving the town, saving residential taxes
Right.
Yep.
burden, that's really it, right? I mean, there's no,
And depending on the type of commercial
yeah.
property that you've got, they may not draw as many services as the residential class is doing, you know. Education,
Yeah.
you know, they're not bringing kids into, you know, you might see an increase in public safety, like calls to the point for lockouts or break-ins or whatever. But typically those are less than
Right.
bringing children into the,
So the biggest, if we looked at Littleton, besides IBM, I think what the biggest moneymaker for a town is a hotel. Is that fair to say, when you put a,
I would have to look at that. I mean, you know, the IBM is the big one.
yeah,
But the hotel combined with the room excise, you know, the real estate and the room, it's a good, you know, it's a good revenue.
And they drive a lot of the meals tax. You
They
get
drive
out of
some of it,
other
yeah.
places too, right?
Yeah,
Right, to the point and everything.
because they're feeding them right into.
So, it's only money.
Well, we've obviously been extremely
but,
fortunate.
you know, you talked about,
It's just-
we're talking about this like we're at the top of the food chain on the tax levy, but we're literally in the middle.
Right, so I put this one up, because
Maybe
I won't go
that.
through all of these, but I thought you know, it'd be helpful for you to look at, but this one I think is important to look at the 18 communities that we're looking at within a 10-mile radius. So these are the communities: Concord, Carlisle, Harvard, Boxborough, you know, all the way over to Shirley. As far as average single-family value, Littleton is at number 11, which is pretty close to the middle, the little on the lower side of it. Average single-family tax bill, we're at number 10. So again, we're close to the middle, almost exactly the middle. The tax rate, again, this is the mathematical factor, so it doesn't, to me, this is meaningless data. This is the most meaningless
Yeah.
piece of the whole process, but it's the one everybody tends to focus on, because it's a, you know,
Right, I
it's
saved you.
a hard number.
Whatever.
Who's number one on that one, right?
Well,
Right, so
Maynard's
Maynard.
number one because they have lower values. So because their property values are lower, they still have the levy that they can raise. It's, again, it's just math, divided into
And
their,
they have virtually no growth.
right.
I
Nowhere
mean,
to
they're just maxed out.
Yep,
There's
they're
no
done.
place to put anything in
Right.
Maynard.
And then you go down to Concord, you know, 1429. Now, Air has a split rate, so, you know, again, you're looking at our split rate, Air's is a split rate also, so they shift to commercial, so. And then you look at the total levy, we're pretty much in the middle, 25 million, as far as the residential class goes. So really, we're not, you know, we're riding the 50th percentile there.
Yeah,
So-
this to me is more useful than all these other numbers, seeing relative, because I was thinking, well, but You need to have towns like us, but this shows that we're
Right.
kind of in the middle of all the
Right.
towns, and so it all goes together. Yeah,
Yep.
this is very good, actually.
And it's a double-edged sword. Everybody wants the value of the property to be on this high end of this list.
Right, oh, yeah.
Right.
But,
But with that comes the other, the
yeah,
other side of this.
that's right. No, it's democracy in action. More services,
I
less
guess the-
taxes.
Yeah, the best situation would be for you to have a very high single-family value with a very robust commercial.
Correct.
And obviously, there's a lot of communities like that in
Yeah.
Massachusetts. You know, I would,
Well,
Yeah, this one I like.
Out
it.
here, it seems like they're
no,
kind
it's
of
like
inverse, but,
128.
Yeah,
no
yeah.
problem.
but even there, the towns that are really high don't tend to have as much commercial as the ones that are lower,
Well,
right? In general.
No,
yeah,
you're
look at
right.
the, yeah, look at the
Brookline
next
and-
page.
Look at the next page.
If you want to come,
I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of,
just if you want to come crashing to
So
earth.
here's previous 5 years average, that's when you're looking
Yeah,
at?
yeah.
Previous 5-year average annual growth.
Growth rates.
Yeah,
so we're higher on,
well, housing has gone up about, again, middle of the pack, about 2.5 to 3/4%. Family tax bill has gone up 4%.
Tax rate.
and again, that tax rate, it's math. It doesn't really, to me, it doesn't mean anything, because your tax rate might go down in a year, your values go up, so,
Now, the residential tax levy, we're number one. At 5.46.
But some of that is because of the growth, right?
it's the.
growth is
It's
what's
the
driving
growth,
that,
it's
though.
the new values of the house, it's
Everything.
absolutely.
But all the new
Yep.
houses and the new expensive houses, so
New
that's
houses coming on at
We're the-
7.
we're the
shifting.
high- we're the
not
high
only more, but we're
residential
shifting
market.
from,
When you look at these other communities, they don't have the developments that are going in like we do.
And they don't have a nice new football field, so we should be paying more, right?
but then air's right there, and
And they're all
they're,
getting them though. I'll tell you.
They're all jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ayers, again, Ayers,
air's kind of the same thing, right? They're going through the
and they
same
are a
stuff
split
now.
rate community. They're a good community that we kind of watch
Yeah.
because they, they have a good commercial industrial base, well, a lot of industrial. But, they do a lot of similar, things,
Okay,
so. And I gave you plenty of other,
yep, no, that's fine, I
I
just thought that was
didn't want to bore
interesting.
you with it, but I thought it was interesting, so.
Good.
But yeah, they'll vote the factor, my encouragement will be, just in being forthcoming with the information that there's not a lot of commercial buildings coming online next year, so just a caution against that.
And where is the project down by the train station in the planning process? Anybody heard what's happening with that? I know it came up before the planning board and then kind of, I haven't heard any more about it.
Yeah, I went to that meeting and there was a lot of talk about just the traffic, obviously, and the community concerns. They showed a design, the developer showed a design of potential.
Right. With the,
Yeah, that's an interesting, I haven't seen.
I haven't seen
seen
anything
any
as far
more.
as
Okay,
where
I
it is.
just didn't know if anybody had any input on that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, once it gets permitted, we kind of put it on our radar as
Radar
growth.
at that point, yeah, okay.
So, given that, I was thinking about that, just curious, so if they do that, they're gonna do the street improvement, there's gonna be sidewalks and so on from the train station down to Taylor and so on. If a lot of those buildings stay empty, what's the likelihood that someone would come along and say, we wanna put apartments or condos? I know we have all the other things and so on, but, I mean, it's so close to the train station, it would be,
They'd fill.
yeah, they would. Okay,
Yep.
just curious.
Well,
And zoning and so on, if it's commercial, they can still put in other stuff,
Yeah.
right?
It'd be great mixed use, I mean,
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it would, that totally would. I mean, again, I'm down the street, I don't really want the traffic, but
Well,
you
how long
take
is
that
that,
out of
that
the-
piece of property at the end of Foster, Taylor Road? You see the big sign, right?
yeah, right,
across
yeah,
the
yeah,
street,
yeah,
yeah.
right, even that, right.
25 years, that's been.
Right, yeah, right.
They've been vacant, right.
So I don't know what the,
But there's still even just all those buildings down there severely underutilized, I think, right, yeah.
But that's another, I mean, if we could get them utilized, it'd be just another bump for the,
Okay, yeah,
Okay, do you have anything on sort of year-to-date and how we're doing, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're out straight, it's crazy. So, you know, Steve and Ann are doing the payroll workup now, so we'll probably be bringing that on live in April, April 1st. We're doing the testing and running parallel right now for a couple of payrolls to make sure that things are working right. We're starting the tax.
Are you doing payroll inside now, too? It's just
We
in the
always
old
do
system?
payroll
You
inside.
always do
Everything's, yeah, we've always had payroll inside.
Yeah, Ann had mentioned that it's much more, a lot more you guys putting in the data than you thought it was going to.
Oh, yeah, it's just because you're designing this system. I mean, it's all back, you know, behind the scenes
Tables and
stuff. Yeah,
configuration,
it's,
yeah.
yes.
Yep.
And then, you know, you do something, it's like, oh, there's this little checkbox, like 4 tabs in down here that needs to be, you know, it's learning the way that this system is created. It's a very powerful system,
Yeah.
but you have to know how you set your town up. And every town is different. So, yeah. So we're doing that. The department heads have been putting in their budgets into the new software, which is very cool. So I'm going to run around after we do the classification hearing. I'm going to go back to the departments and kind of make sure that everybody's budget looks good. And then I got to figure out how to export it all for you guys, because now it's all in the system, and I need to know how to push it out so that you're getting something that's useful to look at. And I think there's even a way that I can give you logins to view only the data, which might be useful because, I'll give you an example. It might be, I could show you this. Let me log in here. Ooh, I get 6 days.
Do you have the schools on board and using it yet?
Yep.
Okay. I'm meeting with them next.
So basically, you set up this budget entry area. Oh, God.
A lot of passwords, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, their security is like, there's nobody getting into this.
Is that your dog's name? I just saw.
All right, changes like every 30 days. It's like,
Yes.
oh my God.
I actually don't buy that at all, because then you're more likely just to write it down someplace.
Ugh.
But anyway.
No, I agree with you. It gets
Yeah, I
like,
just
ugh.
don't think that makes sense, but.
So, all right, so I'm gonna change projections, and I'm gonna go into, I know like Chris Stoddard did his, so.
Of course he did.
I'm gonna meet with him too.
So this is, you know, where they key in the data, and if you're looking at it, so what I'm gonna do is go through every line and make sure that they have all the payroll in and it's proper. So there's details over here that you can look at, so I can see on this line, the salaries for the business admin is set at 63. If I wanna see what the details of that are, I can see it's a grade 8, step 9, you know, any of this information. Now, next year, once we get payroll online, all we have to do is put the job in class and whatever, and it's gonna populate that for
Just
them.
drop in.
And it's gonna roll it for them next year. So this is gonna be slick when it's done. But for this year, I just had them key it in and use the descriptions. So I can look at that. If there is, let's go to capital. Let me change. All right, so I can see the capital requests that are keyed in here already.
This is for everybody, or are we looking at department?
You look, I can have access to everybody, so like if a department head logs in, they're just gonna see their accounts. I see
Right, but
everybody's.
you're seeing everybody's, okay.
So if I look at, so here's the police capital requests for this year. And it includes, their tires, the radio maintenance, the admin vehicle, the cruiser, and the carpeting in the station. If there's details here, you can see the information that they're putting in, all season tires. I think if there's attachments, see if there's any attachments here.
We can get a deal from Tom Fair Tire,
I know, right, right across
Yep.
the street.
right
So
across
there's-
the street, right?
5 backup documents attached for their capital. And hopefully this will work.
So these backup documents, this is, okay. Okay, so these are drag and drop PDFs or
They're
whatever.
drag and drop, or you can import a file or whatever.
This is what the managers are doing?
Yeah.
The chief would
Yep, so
drag
the
it.
chief did this. Here's the capital request document that you're usually used to seeing. And here's the quote from, the flooring place, and so everything is here in the system, and it stays here permanently. So if you ever had a question later, I don't have to go digging through documents.
And we had nothing like this. in the
Nothing. No, we were paper.
Go find the paper.
So, everything is
Oh, that's great.
Everything is in here, so here's another document for the next capital item, for the MHQ quote for the vehicle.
So I guess the next question is, we had talked about, obviously this makes things very transparent. Is this going to be read access for, Fincom as an example,
Yeah.
board members, or is it going to be public? That's
So
another-
I can actually give you guys read access only to the budget module, which means I could give you a login, you could go in and just click online. I could show you how it works, but you could click in, look at the backup. We can look at it while they're giving their presentation. There are reports that I can get out of this, that I want to do first, so that you're not like, and so there's budget reports, there's scenarios, so if I say, I want to roll this budget over at a 5% increase, it'll do that. Or a decrease, it'll do it,
You can email the link, you can export it to Excel.
right.
Nice.
And when you're in, so that's 2 different ways. I can give you a login to the system, you just have access to the budget module. If you had a question, you can just log in and take a look at something. You can't hurt anything, it's just inquiry only. So it's not like, you can
Right.
screw something up. This is Tyler Content Manager. So as we go and we launch that Citizens Transparency module, once we bring the payroll and everybody else on live, here is where you can say, I want this attachment to be, whether I want it to be a public document or a private document. I can redact here, like there's a, right here, highlight area, then I can redact. So like, when I scan some bills, I redact, but I scan everything in, and then I redact it, and I make it private. Because right now, nothing's released, so everything is set to private and non-public. But then we're gonna go through and say, okay, we're gonna mass update, and on certain accounts, we'll make everything public. I won't on like medical payments, so the insurance payments that we make for, nope. Veterans payments, veterans benefits, or any aid that like Tina might distribute. So we gotta figure out what accounts we're not gonna make public. Certain like Park and Rec employees that are minors, I'm not, I'm not putting their info out. So we'll make those decisions and turn those things on, and then people can just look at it.
Yeah.
There'll be a link online at our page to look at the data. And it's pretty slick,
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's working, it's new. The departments did great in that, like, I literally gave them like an hour of training, like, here's how you key your budget in, and I won't let you screw up, I promise, we're gonna make sure it's okay. But they did it, and,
So when we see a resume for the town and someone says they have munis.
that would be a positive. Yeah. Not a requirement, but it's helpful, it's definitely interesting. But I like it. It's about time that we have, something like this. And again, so now when you think, what did they do last year? What did they request? How much was that cruiser quote? It's going to be in there. It's permanently stored. So for you guys, I've been thinking the last couple of days, just to give you a login for inquiry only. Can't hurt anything, and then you can poke around, you can find out whatever you want to find out.
When we do our liaison with our different,
Right.
gives us a head start. When
Yep.
we speak with them, we can speak to them intelligently instead of
Yeah,
having to go over, getting this information for the first time at the meeting, right?
yeah. And when I set up, the users, like when I go in, this is the menu. It's huge. But I can make it so that you only see one thing on your menu. So you can't, you can't have to try and figure out where you're going and, too many things to look at. So we can narrow it right down for you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Well, it looks like we're not going to have a quorum here.
We can do it next time.
So we can hold off until the next meeting, I guess, to do the policies.
The selectmen are going to vote them on Monday.
Yeah,
So-
maybe, we weren't going to meet in December, but maybe we could meet for just a short meeting to review the policies and, any quick update on how the budgeting is going, and do that, because we do want to get them reviewed.
What is the main, and I don't want to go through it all because we should do it when everybody's here, but what's the gist of the,
Well, Bonnie, why
Yeah,
don't
I'll
you just
go through it.
quickly go through
Yeah.
it?
Their
There's not,
housekeeping.
it's really for the
Okay,
most part
okay.
housekeeping, but there are a couple of.
well, I mean, again, I don't know if you
No,
want to go through it
no,
because we'll have to do it again when we have everybody here.
No, it's-
It's so few that I
Yeah.
think it's more textual.
Yep.
Okay.
But there are a couple that I think,
Yeah.
hopefully you'll appreciate.
So I gave you a
Okay.
red line copy.
Yeah.
The first one is on
5, I think.
Fine and
You're right,
appropriated.
yep.
You can have that packet.
5, yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's see
All right.
that.
So, yeah, this just makes sure that we actually appropriate that formula, so we put things into reserve. So if we get our free cash certified, we use the capital, I go through that calculation, and we park the rest into stabilization, OPEB, whatever. And we
Yep.
go through that every year, so free cash doesn't build up. And people go, where do we get, where do we
Yep.
get that money?
Should be less of a discussion point every year,
Yeah.
whether you appropriate or not. Okay.
Let's see. The next
Oh, I
one,
see. Yeah, got it.
Page 11.
Page 11, I
yeah,
think,
that was the,
unless you
And
missed.
who's on, with the board of selectmen that's on here? Is it Paul and
Paul and
Chase?
Joe
Joe.
Knox.
Joe Knox, okay.
And Greg and I. And Mike Fontanella.
Okay,
And it was
great.
unanimous to support
Okay,
that
great.
working group with Bonnie and Steve. And Steve didn't go because he was at the World Series
Yeah,
game. What do you
imagine
think of that?
Wow.
Boy, I'll tell you.
So this is, so you all voted on it.
Yeah, we voted to recommend
The changes.
support, but it's the Finance Committee and the selectmen that actually vote to approve.
Okay.
So our vote is an approval,
Okay.
as the selectmen's vote would be an approval.
Yeah.
Okay?
so on page 11, items 6 and 7 just allow for the use of snow and ice funds that are available to be targeted towards roadway as an option. The way it was drafted previously, it wasn't an option, because roadway is one of our operating budget items, it's not a capital item. And it's a good option, it doesn't require that it be used there, but it allows it to be used there.
Catch.
And I had to change number 7 to okay that additionally, because it is an operating budget. So that if we do in one given year, take 100,000 from snow and ice money and pump it into roadway, that doesn't change the benchmark for the following year. It would be reset back down.
So just, if Chris can come in and make a good pitch, or, if there is some extra incremental need, we could
Yeah.
do that, where before we really couldn't. Okay.
And the last one was just cleaning up the calendar. The calendar was very specific at the end, starting on page 13. It had a lot of dates, and It was very specific. But the budget cycle, even with this specific calendar, it said it will change every year, and it can change. It's just given it as an example. So just to kind of make it a little bit more general than as specific as it was. So we still kept all of the milestones, and just kind of eliminated a lot of the specific dates.
Makes sense.
So
Yep.
there's nothing really earth-shaking,
Yeah, right, I got
but
it.
I think
Yep, no, but
couple of
definitely worth
tweaks.
doing, definitely worth
a
doing, for
couple
sure.
tweaks that I think
Agree.
made sense.
Yep,
And there were a couple of sort of major things that a couple people brought up that were shot down, and it was kind of ho-hum around that. So that's what we decided, to just do this and move forward. So
Okay.
on let's see, Tuesday, December 11th,
Okay.
we decided to cancel that meeting. Sounds like we'll put that back on the agenda. And the specific item will be financial policies, and then just an update on how the different budget discussions are going with the departments.
Okay. I'm not here that week, but this actually explained everything to me.
I still have it in my calendar, I didn't know we canceled it, so,
But Greg and I are assigned to the school committee and DPW, so he'll be able to.
That's fine. But again, we don't need detail, but any sort of,
But the 11th is going to be the new, we're going to stay with the.
yeah, so I'll send a note out to everybody saying that because he didn't show up, there's a remedial session on December 11th, and specifically for that purpose, and then we'll go.
So is this the time of year when we would normally vote on this?
Yeah.
It is usually the cycle, right?
Well, the last time we tried to do this
this was March last time we did
was
it.
March that we did it, and then the time after that, we couldn't get enough people to show up to do anything, so we didn't do anything.
I mean, for sure, the changes, but, your section 26, I noticed, will be reviewed annually
That's the same as it's always been.
and approved by vote annually. So
Right.
that we have to vote on this every year, regardless of changes. Is that-
Theoretically.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I was
That's a good
surprised to
point.
see
That's
that.
what it
Right,
says.
yeah, I
Right.
didn't, I thought it was just when we made changes.
Right,
but
okay.
Maybe in the next version, we should talk about that.
Yeah. Maybe just saying reviewed and
if
it
it
changed,
Tell-
voted.
tell it
should be,
changed.
it does make us at least have to look at it and
Right.
say whether it should be
Right.
reviewed or not, right? So,
Okay. Any input from? You good? Yep.
The only thing was, we had another of the Transportation Advisory Council meetings, and I guess the main thing is just if there are, from people on this board or anybody else that has suggestions or wants for infrastructure purposes, to get them, because I mean, part of the purpose of this council is just to get more input in terms of if people think that there's places need sidewalks or a different light or something's not working or whatever it is, some infrastructure, anything like that, whatever it is, just as another means to get input into the highway department, into public works. So,
Okay. Gary, anything?
no, it was happy birthday to Greg Champney today.
Yeah, okay.
And, no, outside of that, I am on the Town Administrator Search Committee, so like I had mentioned before the meeting, we're in the process of reviewing resumes, so that's where we're at with that, hopefully.
what's the timeline expected on all this?
Yeah, so we will be reviewing resumes the rest of this month and meeting interviews the first few weeks of December, and have hopefully 2 or 3 or however many candidates presented to the selectmen, their first meeting in January. And then, so it's aggressive, but I think it hopefully lines up well with, Keith's actual, when he comes off the books at the end of January.
January, yep.
All righty. Yeah, the only thing I have is, I've met with Chief Bernard on his first cut at his budget, and the only incremental head that he's looking for is the SRO that has been a lot of discussion around it. And it looks like the price tag, including fringes, will be in the 80 grand range. Just, that's for future reference. And the full year impact of the dispatchers is in there. And Bonnie's going to work with him on netting the ambulance receipts against some of it, some, if not most of that cost. So he hadn't had that number yet, but that's what we should look for, is that almost it netting out because of the ambulance receipts. Met with Diane Crory, and looks like that office is going to be looking for some incremental hours.
Which office?
Clerk and
Oh,
collector.
right,
Treasurer,
yeah,
collector,
yeah.
accountant.
That was kind of anticipated.
And I think it sounds like it's going to be a net increase of about 15 hours, maybe.
Right, but not a benefit position,
So
no additional
it's-
benefits.
With all the new state regs and everything, it's driving them crazy in there. So that's
Diane's
something.
extremely busy.
So I think, looking at what they'll be doing, we should expect that. And I met with John Borowski, and the only two things he said he was expecting is continuing on the support of the VFW that the selectmen have supporting this year, and possibly putting some money in his budget for an annual Veterans Day remembrance ceremony. He has the parade.
That wasn't budgeted, this thing, they
No,
just,
no.
oh, wow.
I don't know how they covered it, but
Yeah.
they're covering
It's
it
in donations.
with donations this
Okay.
year.
I figured
So
that was-
he'll be looking for that, and he didn't know how much, but probably not a whole lot. And I have Park and Rec tomorrow, Thursday, and Bonnie and I will go through COA because Liz
Just had her baby.
went out on us and had a lovely baby and is being home happy with her little new baby, so, which is good. And
It's like all life.
And that's all I have, and we don't have minutes because Marilyn's not here, so,
We couldn't vote them anyway because we don't have a quorum. There you go.
Right.
So,
so a minute, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
second. All those in
All
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you hear that, Chuck? Aye.